like to start with saying some few words that there are certain times um, when people make efforts into actions, they turn everything into reality. So with that being said, um, so this was like the foundation that started back in November 2022. So it focused more on youth demographic dividend, since you might know that India is like a huge population. So, and most of them are youth, and more than 46% of it. And and due to which we just thought that if we can use the power of youth in the right direction, we can catalyze climate action to its maximum best. So next slide, please. So as I said before, like we just not only focus only on climate action, it's more about financial inclusion and financial literacy awareness on topics of small savings and debt management, pension funds, and how you manage credit scores, so forth, and all those things. And also to build in kind of a bridge between the common man and also the financial institutions, so that many people can be protected from any kind of economic shocks. And the best part is, um, most of the times when we talk about climate action, somebody has to fund it, right? So in that case, where's the money coming from? Is the question that needs to be asked. Without money, you can't implement anything on the ground. We can just apply for funding from different organizations, and if the money is not released due to certain kind of irregularities or some kind of due diligence measures that said that there are certain components missing in that project. So in that case, what do you do? And so the time to make that action, if it delays to a certain extent, becomes a kind of a problem later on. It's not just creates one problem, it creates multiple problems. Because imagine, for example, a water adaptation thing, like related with in terms of flooding, if it's not done on the right time. Imagine there is a huge kind of a storm coming in, and of course, the people there are affected by those consequences of not implementing it on time. And of course, this is a huge kind of a discussion that is going on in an international arena. And that is exactly what we were focusing on. So there are certain times we look up to others for help, but then why can't we our help in those times of need by making sure that we mobilize funds in the right direction and implement it on time? So this is the thing of the foundation that we are working in. And it also focuses on reducing inequalities where there is distribution in terms of social security to the people. Next slide, please. So we thought like on different scales, like where we have to focus on one on international cooperation, where so like since I'm already part of GYCC, so I just thought like there are different organizations around the world that we have to come up together as youths, because at the end of the day, it's it's the clock is kind of ticking. And also to make sure that the financial literacy awareness is being given to the youth also. And why am I saying specifically financial literacy is because there's huge investment potential in terms of renewables. And imagine you're just in your 20s or like in your early 30s or something like that. And if you can invest it right now, of course, this is going to be productive in terms of like the planet, like in terms of transitioning to low carbon or zero carbon when you use more solar or like PV or something like that. And also at the same time, it's going to be also a profitable investment for the youth by the time. And when there is more financial power with the youth, of course, they can themselves implement certain things and they can proceed with the action without relying on other institutions technically. So it's like making a self-sufficiency model. And also this foundation focuses on youth exchange on different platforms with different universities. So like in that way, like we are trying to cover most of the topics. So next slide, please. So as I discussed earlier, like why finance is like the main thing when it comes to solving financial crisis. And of course, I mean, like, there are certain countries with the different forms of financial inclusion for the youth. Many people might have bank accounts, and some countries, despite having a huge population growth, doesn't have bank accounts, which means that they can't contribute to that financial firepower in terms of taking the steps towards climate action. And and when I saw like when I was with NYPI like in Korea, so at the time I was writing a policy brief that focused on different economic situation of the youths in different countries. I mean, like doesn't matter if it's India or Korea, wherever the country is. Many people struggle on this kind of this economic capacity. Now, of course, there are now automations coming in, and due to which there's like job creation has been at stall and also rising unemployment. So when there's just when people live in survival mode, they just think for themselves. They can't think about the society. In that case, of course, in the end of the day, like there's no concern for climate action because people need to survive. But at the same time, if people are taught these things in their schools or classrooms regarding financial literacy and how to make a bank account and how like you can access like different kind of schemes where you can potentially beat inflation at the long run and where to make the investments and this would be a huge growth potential not just for the society but for the youth itself and 10 years down the line we would be in a different position altogether to take the measures on headstrong. So next slide please. So these were some of the schemes that we are trying to advise back home in India. So there are these ways where we try to empower youth by the time they turn 18. That's the legal age, and how to find tax exemptions regarding those schemes is what we were trying to say to the people there, and how they can also beat inflation at the same time just by investing in the right returns. So next slide, please. So regarding this, last time, maybe in the month of December 2022, there was a global youth leader conference in Korea at the youth agency there. And I was able to present related with the Edgar Foundation of what the work we are doing there on the ground in India. And so that people would be aware of different kinds of knowledge exchange. Next slide, please. So this was a recent event that was conducted like maybe in the month of July. And why? I mean, like we teamed up with one of the biggest banks in India, like the State Bank of India, which is the biggest financial lending arm. And there we started to create this impact in different colleges and universities through our drive campaigns where we are focusing on youth to open the necessary bank accounts and all those things. At the same time, use those money to leverage in investing in renewables and other areas related with the water sector or related with hydroelectric powers. So this is the thing that is going on the ground. And and of course, we were targeting different sustainable goals, like at the same time. So one was SDG 13, that is, of course, the climate action. Then there was SDG 9. Then there was a better SDG 5 in terms of gender equality. Like we were also advocating for taking like economic empowerment for women in certain areas. And I mean, and that is also being said because the government of India has given so many benefits for women specifically, and now they can take advantage of those schemes, like in terms of investments. So this is something that we're doing related with like how to harness the power of demographic dividend, because today you might be 10,000, and imagine if it is just one Korean won and if everybody can contribute, it becomes a 10,000 Korean won. I'm just saying for an example. So imagine like depends on the person that contributes. I mean, and as I said, like since the youth population in India is like very large at scale, like maybe around like more than 46%. So that's like a country of 1.4 billion. You can just make a mathematical figure, which is around like 600 million roughly. And if everybody can start to contribute, that's going to be a huge power game altogether. And next slide, please. So we also started conducting a forestation program. Now, of course, this was related with the climate action thing, like related with the climate action plan that we were also doing. So there were two measures that were proposed by our team. One was the technological measures where there's some monitoring and surveillance through some GPS, GIS, blockchain technologies. Of course, not everybody is like an expert in those subjects, of course, but what we can do was like the second measure proposed was like strengthening local governance, decentralization, and also making sure there's financial inclusion of those indigenous communities so that, yeah, in case of future problems. So let me break it down one by one. What I'm trying to say is like decentralization allows people to a certain extent to have control over their land and over their rights also at the same time by legal channels where they can team up with local NGOs or like even including this big financial institutions. So that is something um, that we are focusing on, and also like in terms of local governance, we are appointing like leaders, like elders of those local communities to have like a rapport with the local government systems over there so that they can reach out to them in terms of distress, like in terms of like any forceful evacuation or something like that. So last but not the least, the financial inclusion part, and why we are doing this is basically to improve their social security schemes, like in terms of access to health insurance or in terms of accessing like insurance related with crop failures or anything related with um, life insurance and accidental insurance and all those things so that their family would be protected financially. And of course, they can use it to enhance their financial standings at the on a long-term basis. So this is something that I focused on, and and as a foundation, we are doing this kind of work on the ground, and hope to continue it on a larger scale in the times to come. And this is what we are trying to do. And yeah, the last slide, please. So by pioneering certain ideas into reality, we decided to break poverty and build society. So that is up with my presentation, and thank you for giving me this floor to present.
Yes, thank you. And if anyone has any question, please leave. Just turn your microphone, or you can leave it on the chat. And yeah, I think it's a good idea that you're focusing on the financial part to to fight against climate change. And yeah, actually they are all connected, as we can see on the SDGs. So yeah, thank you for sharing your action. And I hope we can talk about that more in detail when we meet in person in Colombia. And yeah, I think, let me see if Eira is here. I think she's not here yet. Then maybe Andy, could you go next for like the experience sharing? Are you ready with it?
Yeah, hi.
Oh yeah, could you speak a little bit louder?
Can you hear me?
Am I the only one cannot hear him well?
No, I think he needs to speak louder, please.
Oh, okay. How about now? Is it
Yeah,
okay?
it's better.
Then I'll share my screen.
Yeah. 1 second, I will enable it. Yeah.
Hi. So my name is Andy Kono Song. But my English name is Andy. And before I start, my apologize for not sending this presentation file in time to Diane Kim. And yeah, here's my just a small experience sharing. So what I'm going to do is introduce myself and then briefly talk about how I joined the GYCC and then what I did in past years, and also share my thoughts from my experience in protecting the environment, then give you guys my discussion topics. So my name is Kono Song, as I said, and my English name is Andy, so you can just freely call me Andy. And right now I'm an undergraduate student at Soham University. I'm taking a gap semester right now, and I'm majoring in global Korean studies, political science, and also business administration. Um, and yeah, I joined the GYCC last year, and then I'm in Team 3 right now. So the reason why I joined the GYCC is because um, the global crisis is actually starting to affect my country, which is South Korea. Then starting from last year, I started to feel that these global crises is actually affecting my life. For example, the flooding in Seoul, Gangnam, near my house in last year, actually um, trapped a lot of people in car. The flooding actually trapped a lot of people in the car, and then it actually there was some incidents that they couldn't get out from the car, so uh, they were drowned to death. And also many infrastructures were destroyed by this flooding. And even though they made some improvements, to prevent the flooding, it actually happened in other areas in Korea. For example, the Osong underground tunnel accident in this year actually killed more than like killed 9 people in the underground tunnel because same reason, the flooding trapped the car, so they couldn't get out in time. So it took precious lives in different regions in Korea. Not only the floodings, but also the wildfire happening in different areas, especially in Gangneung, which is at the east side of Korea. Um, as trees are important um, features to prevent floodings, the wildfire incidents in Gangneung was critical. I believe it was critical to uh, for our country's deforestation and flooding. So yeah, because the flooding and the wildfire happens in different areas in South Korea, I wanted to personally, I wanted to um, prevent or hopefully to stop these kind of natural disasters. So although it's a small action, it's a small practice, but I'm doing this starting from last year. It's basically recycling, um, recycling empty bottles and I'm using the application called Today's Recycle. In Korean, is 오늘의 분리수거. So what I do is basically I find a recycling bin, appropriate recycling bin, and then sorry for the dog smell. So what I do is I find a recycling bin, and then I take the labels off and then crush the plastic bottles. Then after I put it in the bin, I get a point, which is a bottle is a worth 10 Korean won. That's like a cent in the States. And then from the image, I recycled more than 600 bottles. So I could say it's not a small amount. And right now I have 400 points because I donated 3,600 points to the Childhood Cancer Help Center. So I wanted to not only to protect the environment, but also give this to my near community, give my positive influence to near community. So yeah, the second image is after I recycled 32 bottles. And then yeah, although it's not a magnificent scale of my experience compared to others. Although it's a small action, but still I learned that after I'm recycling these recycling bottles consistently, my colleagues or my friends started to ask like how do I do this? I think you're doing great, and then I also want to participate in recycling or giving good influence to the environment. So for my actions, I learned that even though it's a small action, it can it can hopefully eventually stop global crisis if everyone starts to give good influence to others. So after I did some small actions in order to protect my nearby environment, so others started to participate in doing these actions, such as recycling bottles or also planting trees by joining our near community cafe, online cafe, and then these actually started to give positive influence to over the community. So the community I have influenced it's called Mapo district in Seoul, Korea. So it's one of the parts in Seoul, but people are including me, starting to actually participate and put in action in order to stop the global crisis in Seoul, Korea. So here's my discussion question. Sorry for the misallocation of the word texts. So there are two questions. To what extent can an individual contribute to environmental protection? So what I'm saying is, what are the limits an individual can change the environmental problems? Would there be how high would the limit be? And it also makes me think like, does this individual actions actually help the environmental protection? So even though I gave some positive influence, but as it is not as it is not a big changes, so it always doubts me, like, how am I really changing my nearby community? My second question is, what are some practical solutions for deforestation? And the reason why I came up with this question is, so there are many solutions we came up in Team 3, but some of those solutions were really not feasible or because of some technical issues, or it's way too broad to bring up the solution. So I'm asking GYCC group members, what are some thoughts for actually make it happen for deforestation? And yeah, that's it. And thank you for listening to me.
Yeah, thank you for sharing your experience and your thoughts. And yeah, regarding the discussion topic, since we don't have much time, you can share it on our group chat, and then we can, like, anyone who wants to share their thoughts, they can just freely post it on the group chat. And I also think, like, your second question is highly related to our GYCC itself for deforestation, because we are working on that issue. So I hope that we can make some movements or some differences with GYCC members. And yeah, thank you for your experience sharing. And next, we can start with Eira's presentation. I'm going to share her presentation. 1 second.
Hello, hi everyone. I hope that you all can hear me. I'm sorry for the background noise because I'm outside, but let me know in the chat if you are if you have stopped listening to me and you can't hear me anymore, and I'll try to recap as much as possible. Can we go to the beginning of the slides, please? So, hi everyone. My name is Nurisha Hirakanum. Everyone calls me Eira in GYCC, so I'm really happy to be here. I decided to share about the UN Sustainable Development Goals in Malaysia because right now that's like my main work. But also it's been something that I think about deeply, where in a sense that, like, what does it mean for sustainable development in Malaysia? And like when I do work with GYCC from the perspective of deforestation, like what does it mean for us and with regards to the sustainable development in general? So yeah, next slide, please. Going into the table of contents, so I'm just going to share a bit more about myself because I mean it's been a few months working together. I think it'd just be a good refresher about myself, and then let's just talk about like what are the initiatives for SDGs in Malaysia, and where do we go from here? Like, what is, how does SDGs, what does SDG look like for the next 8 years before reaching towards Agenda 2030? So that's like the narrative of the discussion. Next slide, please. So, can skip this. A little bit about me, the next one. I graduated in English for International Communication. So I studied linguistics and communication courses. And then I look into, for my final year project or my final year bachelor's dissertation, I looked into the narrative of climate justice in some of the international reports by the local, by global NGOs around the world. I was a YCL alumni since 2016, and I've done projects on gender equality, sustainable fashion, and also right now I'm working on this project called the EC project, and basically is an opportunity for young Southeast Asian youth to learn English by discussing films. And the films that we discuss are about like waste management and like the minimalist lifestyle, the zero waste lifestyle. We also discuss films about food, as we have been aware that like in Southeast Asia, the food is quite similar, but we just have like maybe different names around the different countries. So we just want to also collaborate like regional awareness. So we discuss like films about food, and we also watch film like Spirited Away by Studio Ghibli to discuss like youth empowerment, or rather like to see like what are the challenges that youth in Southeast Asia experience. So that's like my current project right now. I've been advocating for climate change since 2018 through this group, Malaysian Youth Delegation. And this is a group that reads the Paris Agreement climate change agreement, which is the Paris Agreement. And then they send youth to COP. So again, like this work is highly relevant to what GYCC does and what all of us share in common in that sense. I'm also an Asia Europe Foundation education alumni and produced this report on waste management in Cambodia. So I do like the work of waste management. I feel like Korea, for example, was a bit life-changing in the sense that like you guys have very strong culture of recycling, strong culture of like sorting and differentiating the trash. Unfortunately, we don't have that in Southeast Asia. So it was very interesting exposure and different ways to do waste management. Recently, I've also recycled and donated about 150 kilograms of stuff because I was moving houses and I was cleaning up and packing, and there's just like so many things to recycle, and like there's just like old clothes, like shoes, you know, books, like all these things that can be recycled. And I'm glad that I was able to find other companies or organizations that recycle these waste. And I've been working on the SDGs since 2019. I was a research intern at like this think tank in Malaysia. So we do work on sustainable consumption and production. And I was a capacity building and communication officer for the APPGM SDG. This is a parliamentarian group, and they work on localizing the SDGs and talking about the SDGs to the local communities and like local governments. And now I'm the research officer for the National SDG Roadmap Phase 2. So Malaysia has a development roadmap, and now we want to do like a target setting activity based on the SDGs for Malaysia's development. So I'm with the Islamic University of Malaysia and working collaboratively with UNDP Malaysia and the Ministry of Economy. So these are just a little bit background of myself, and I hope that like this gives you an maybe like an overview. And if you have like ideas to collaborate and like maybe some other ideas you want to share, I hope that like we can have further discussion on this. Next slide, please. So just a little bit about SDGs in Malaysia. So I'm just going to briefly talk about SDGs at the federal government level, or like the administrative level of government, which is the federal level, and then the subnational level, which is the state level in Malaysia, and then the local level, which is where local communities and local municipalities are involved. So in Malaysia, the main coordinating body for the Sustainable Development Goals is the Ministry of Economy. So Malaysia, whenever there's a conference in New York, for example, the Ministry of Economy will be the one who produces like reports, produces and getting the right workforce or representative to talk about the SDGs globally. Right now, they have established the SDG Center. So this is a very exciting opportunity for Malaysia because the next 8 years, there will be more work on the SDGs and more commitment to achieve all the 17 goals in different aspects, like different sectors. So it's a very exciting time for Malaysian government in that sense. Through the SDG roadmap, the National SDG roadmap, there is an alignment activity where every ministry, different sectors in Malaysia have their own targets and KPIs. So what we do is that we align those targets at the ministerial level, which has gone through the parliament. And then these targets are aligned to the SDGs targets and indicators. So this is a very exciting work because number one, we see the importance of the SDGs at the national level or national development plan. So this gives background, or this gives an understanding about like what sustainable development can look like for Malaysia. And if other countries does this too, this gives an information to other governments about how SDGs are related to their countries. And for that, like there are the voluntary national review, which is a document that is submitted at the high level political forum, where every year or every 2 years, 2 to 3 years, New York gathers. There's also the SDG summit that happens. So these are the platform where there are global representation or national representation of the SDGs. And not just in Malaysia's perspective, but I'm pretty sure like there are other countries who submits this document as well. So I've seen documents from India. I've also seen documents from Japan. So these are like opportunities to see what our governments have been doing with regards to SDGs. Next slide, please. At the subnational level, which is the state level, there is a federal agency called the Urbanist and Plan Malaysia. So basically, like these are the agencies that are responsible for the planning works, not just physical development, but as we know, the SDGs doesn't just talk about like, oh, building or land use, but it talks also about social development and how we can protect the environment. So Urbanist and Plan Malaysia works together with the state government of Selangor. So Selangor is a state in Malaysia, to produce a voluntary subnational review. So this kind of review, this is still in works and it's not been published yet, but this kind of review again gives that state level context to how Malaysia, like a state in Malaysia, is advancing their work in SDG. So like Selangor state have strategies or like plans on how they want to resolve poverty, for example, or achieve gender equality and provide quality education. What are the scholarship opportunities? So these are like the things that can be reported for the voluntary subnational review. So this is currently in the working. And at the local level, there is the voluntary local review. So these local reviews are like a global process, but it transcends different governance spaces. So it's not just the national level, but it's also subnational and local level of governance. And I feel like even in Korea too, you guys have your own region, you guys have your districts. So it's not just the Ministry of Environment or the Foreign Affairs who are dealing with the SDGs, but there are also other situation, other subnational organization that subnational governance level that discuss this SDG. So this is a good, I would say, progress for SDGs where people can discuss it at different level of governance. So next slide, please. I think at this moment, like besides the government taking action, there's also like other parts of governments or like other parts of stakeholders, like in this case, parliamentarians, which are politicians themselves, and they are also participating with communities to produce local projects. And these local projects are funded by the Ministry of Finance. So for example, like this kind of model of solutions or this kind of model of SDGs implementation, it reflects multi-stakeholder partnership, which highlights SDG 17. So this is an opportunity where like we have institutional reforms and like strengthening institution and building partnerships. So this targets directly SDG 16 and 17 to develop that kind of environment that enables for SDG solution projects. So for example, right, like after we have done all these solution projects, and then we look at maybe certain goals from SDG 14, maybe even 15, and SDG 13. These are our key SDGs with regards to environment. And how do we affect change? And perhaps like this is an opportunity to engage with our local communities and local government to say like, hey, we have done this solution at this level. So this is also an opportunity for us to access maybe greater investment from other sources of funding, but also just have a bit more collaboration with maybe politicians or maybe other local leaders in our communities addressing like pressing issues in our society. So I feel like sometimes maybe we feel like, oh, this project will just end here. But I think like there are certain projects that can be advanced further. And this is another opportunity for that. the next slide, please. So I have like this question, maybe like what happens in your country. Do we have time for that, Diane? Maybe just to go through if anyone wants to share, if they know.
Yes, I think we can have a brief discussion. Like, is it like what happens regarding SDG or regarding climate change in your country?
Yeah, so yeah, SDGs or climate change maybe. And say for example, like if in your project you engage with other stakeholders, are they like successful engagement, or maybe if you want to talk about a bit more about that as well? Yeah, anyone?
Yeah, if anyone wants to share your thoughts or experience, you're more than welcomed. And like just to start with me, like for example in Korea, like this summer was like just too hot. It was very, very hot. Like, and every year I think it's getting harder and harder. So I think that is the one main point that people can really feel the issue of climate change, that it gets more severe, much severe than ever. And also this summer we had a bad typhoon, which is called Kanun. And I heard that that typhoon was really powerful because of the climate change. So like climate change, I think like the extreme weather makes people feel the severity of the climate change. So yeah, I personally hope that um even though like many people say that it's kind of late, but I still believe that there's a room that we can change. So yeah, that was a case in Korea. Is there any other like who want to share your country's issue or like story?
Maybe like I like, sorry, I saw the chat before I say that. Yeah, the snowflake mountains are melting and there are higher chances of avalanches right now, but there's no rain. Yeah, so as we can see that like there's a lot of like weather changes in like all over the country now, and I feel like there's also more forest fires in like for example Hawaii recently as well, and Greece, all these countries. And like sure, so this is where like sometimes with my work when we talk about the sustainable development, right? Sustainable development is a plan, and then we have like all these visions and all these ideas on how we can solve an issue with regards to the environment. But on the other hand, we also have a real life situation where like the weather directly affects the livelihood of people. So how do we reconcile these different perspective or different impacts from the current changes in weather, for example, or in the climate right now? And how do we align that different impacts and different livelihood affected with the current development plan? And I feel like that's the most significant part about the SDGs, because when we talk about like preservation of forests, for example, in a long term, it helps us to make sure that like we have carbon capture mechanisms, we have more robust environment to help us protect ourselves from rain, from avalanches, because forests helps do that, you know. So it's very interesting like how now the effects are much more immediate, but our plans, when the government plans something, it's like it's a 5-year plan, it's a maybe 10-year plan, you know. So how can we as youth reconcile these aspects of planning and the aspect of doing and implementing these actions? So that's definitely something that when I attended all these meetings with the government, it's always like important for them to determine what are the short-term actions and what are the medium-term and what is the long-term actions, because we really cannot look at different ways of doing things. Amali mentioned that like in terms of Sri Lanka, despite being a tropical island country, yep, there's also the heat wave. Yeah. Yeah, like you're right about global boiling. I feel like heat waves are everywhere, and like because of heat waves we have forest fire, and then we have air pollution. Like all these things are just, it's so urgent, and it's already happening. So again, like we cannot just rely on a 5-year plan and all this planning and all these targets. We actually have to do something about it, even if it means to change the targets. But this is where governance becomes a challenge. And I feel like as youth, taking the role as an advocate or as an activist will give more value. Sorry, will give us more value to promote awareness and action. So we cannot just rely to go like to these meetings with the governments and then like, oh yeah, we have to um, plan in the next 5 years, you know. But it's really just more about like, okay, these are urgent problems. What can the ministry do at this moment right now? Because it affects the budget, it affects the planning targets, but it also affects level of poverty into people. You know, when we have heat waves, the crops are affected, people don't have food to eat, you know, or if they are fishermen, they're also being affected because fishes are dying in the water because it gets too hot, you know. So all these are like real life issues, and how do we reconcile that? So thank you for sharing, Sima and Amali and Diane as well. I feel like this there is this gap with urgency and like local planning. So I hope that like we can talk to our local communities and local leaders, as in like our politician. I'm not sure so much so about the country's elections so much, but like in Malaysia recently we had general election last year, and this year just last week we had like local elections where we choose our state representatives. Um, it's so sad that like agenda of climate change is not being discussed a lot. Like it's not part of manifesto. It's not part of like, you know, people are still focused on like addressing poverty, achieving modernism. So I think like as youth, this is the time for us to engage with our local politicians and say like, hey, you know, and maybe even our mayor, right? Like, hey, we can no longer talk about just addressing poverty or creating like modern ways. We also have to like address the real issues that our environment is facing. So I think like that's a role for us as youth to take on as an advocate or an activist to address like climate change in our society. So yeah, thank you for sharing, everyone. Andy, I also wanted to point out like thank you for just sharing on the recycling initiative. In Malaysia, we also have that. Like, I remember sending like 25 kilos of clothes to IKEA. So IKEA Malaysia has like this project. Sorry, it's not IKEA Malaysia. It's like this another Swedish brand. It's called Ikano. It's a mall. It's a private company. But like what they do is a recycling initiative where they give you points for recycling like certain amount of clothes. Yeah, so I feel like it may not be like 100% effective, but I feel like this is better than doing nothing at all, you know. And it's always a good opportunity, and I hope that like we learn more ways and we encourage like local businesses as well to do more recycling and sustainability initiative in our community. So thank you, everyone. The next slide is just a little bit more about where do we go forward. So let me just explain about localization, or rather like what do we do further for the implementation of the SDGs. So we have the localization aspect. And what does it mean to localize SDGs is that you have these global targets, right? Like the 17 SDGs are addressed globally and addressed to the governments. But when we talk about the localization, it is the consideration of local context. It is looking into like as a member of society and as a member of community, what is your needs and how does it related to the SDGs, and how can the SDG targets or indicator inform to better your quality of life. And I feel like these are the way that when we talk about localization, in the context of the UN, it is the responsibility of local governments. But let's say for us as youth, when we discuss localization, it can also be translated at home. Like, how do we reduce, or how do we sustainably consume products, or how can we have quality education? Like, what does it mean for us as a young person? Like, maybe for some person, quality education means just like to have better schools around them. But for someone like me who grew up in the city, having a quality education means going abroad and to study overseas, meaning that when you have localization aspect, you have different priorities and you have different contexts on how that SDGs can be affected in your life. So this is something that we can discuss further about, like how SDGs impact ourselves and people like us and people like from the marginalized community, people who are underprivileged, So these are important tools or important opportunities for you to talk to like other people besides like people coming from the same background as you. Another thing is that youth engagement beyond participation. So federal government, state government, and local governments have the responsibility to like engage with youth in policy making process, maybe in the local solutions aspect. Like, youth is a stakeholder and they are affected. Like, when local council decided to close off school, it affects the kind of education that we have access to, for example, So this is something that the local community the local government has to engage with youth, and this is what we can do as well. So as I mentioned, the advocacy and activism aspect, there are so many ways for you to express yourself to different stakeholders, different audience. So I think like the way for me is by writing some articles and also like working directly. Right now I'm work as much as I am as a consultant. I also try to be engaged with the governance process. So that's a way to work as you figure out professionally what you want to do. There's also capacity building. So by joining programs like this, we learn from each other. We are building our own capacity, but we are also building like people around us, the capacity of people around us. So these are like very important. And lastly is like actually implementing the project. So a plan cannot just remain a plan. Something has to be done. And I feel like from joining GYCC since 2020, I feel like as much as this project maybe seem a bit small, but there's always so many ways that we can expand it and make greater impact. So I feel like we're on a good track as long as we're keep working and committing towards what we can do for the environment. So yeah, thank you everyone for listening. The next slide have my contact details. So if you ever want to be in touch, feel free to. And yeah, thank you for listening.
Yes, thank you for sharing your experience. And that'll be it for today's experience sharing. And actually, we have other participants who volunteered for this experience sharing, but theirs will be shared as a recording. So please, when I share it on the chat, you can see it on through that links. Yeah, and maybe we can have a short break for 5 minutes and then start with the action plan progress from each team. So let's see you in 5 minutes. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, so I was about to leave, but anyway, so please excuse me for not turning on the camera. And Jane, I just shared to you the updated version of magazine that we were worked on. So for the team's update, yes, we finished our magazine, and still we need to add actually 2 articles. One is about what is bioeconomy, which is actually ready. I just need to add it. And then I was going to add actually about Colombian converse, but I really don't have any pictures or things to add here. So it would be really great if I can have something from your side, like maybe if you had any meetings, virtual meetings, or any captures, or just some information. So I'll add it, and then we can have that really go for the magazine. So I hope once PCO inform us the website is ready, then we can share it there. So yeah, so this is the second issue, and so we had actually our very short meeting yesterday to discuss what we will be doing in the presentations in Colombia. So yes, actually we are 3, but still maybe we 2 are not sure whether we can participate in physically, but anyhow we will manage to do the presentations virtually, or we will find a way. So for now we thought that because we were discussing the importance of environmental literacy and leaving no one behind when it comes to climate action. So, and what we were wanted to emphasize is the language barriers. So we thought we will be addressing that issue during our presentation, and we have our magazines as results because we wanted to publish contents in different languages and let people to know and let people to have information easily so that they can be aware of and they can be involved in whatever the actions that they can do in their capacities. So of course the magazine, maybe you may not seen so many contents in different languages, but this is just beginning. As I was saying, I would like to keep this magazine going on, like publishing or issuing these biannually, even though the 2022 and 2023 GYCs will be end here in this year, but yes, I look forward to continuing with this magazine as a part of my work and as part of GYCC. And yes, so regarding the final report, so we are preparing it. So we have divided 4 parts among members. So we will be finishing it, and then we are going to have another meeting on 24th to discuss and finalize the report, and then we'll be sending to it. For the presentation, I also want to know some information about the report and presentation. Do we have any page limit for the report? That's the first question. And the second, do we have any format for the final presentation? I mean the PPT, or are we going to use the same PPT templates like last year? So yeah, that's all from my side. And if there are any feedbacks or any comments, please let me know. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's good to hear that your team has the second version of the magazine. It looks really cool, and yeah, I will read through the magazine soon. And yeah, if maybe and oh yeah, I think I forgot to announce that our website has been reopened. So that's kind of we're renewing it, but you can just access it now. So I'm gonna share the link. 1 second. So like the domain has been changed. So we're not using .org anymore, but we are using .global, because like the original domain has been bought by someone else. So we needed to change it. So we can we're renewing the website now, but we can still update our things on it. So yeah, once you update it on your team's action plan page, and share the links to the participants. That would be great. And also good to hear that your team has started with your team's final report. Yeah, so thank you. And how about team 2?
Yes, Diane.
Yeah, so could you share any updates from your team?
So technically, Gonwoo reached out to me, and of course, as you might have seen on the presentation, there were two measures proposed. One was a technological measure where we have to use um, GPS, GIS, and blockchain technologies to monitor timber logging as a part of our like an approach to stop deforestation. That was measure number one. And there was this other measure that was proposed that was related with decentralization and local governance. So where we have to strengthen local communities so that they can be a part of, those um, guardsmen against illegal logging and as well as in terms of owning their land rights. So in line with that, we decided as a part of our foundation and all those things, we decided to implement it on the ground. It was an operation called Green Sentinel. So, so it is a part of giving the people back the power in terms of like strengthening local governance through um, programs that would include them in financial capacities so that they would protect themselves financially. At the same time, they will let the government know that it is part of their position because when you're officially registered with the bank, there is an official address on their names, which means that there is a legal claim to so many issues confronting those areas. So with that being said, so as a part of this outreach missions that we did, along with one of the biggest banks in India, so we targeted one specific place in Tamil Nadu, which is actually Tiruchirappalli, where we actually went to those areas where we have to be with the indigenous communities and rural areas. With those people, we interacted with them, and finally, they also they become part of our program later on. That they were willing to even donate like a quarter acre of their land for afforestation program by the foundation itself. So they we planted trees based on that so that yeah, it can future wise we can quantitatively measure that how much carbon that these trees would actually like, like mitigate and also act as carbon sinks, and thereby also we thought about like even educating them on carbon credits and all those measures where we can think of so that they can incentivize on afforestation. So these are some measures that is being done in India as we speak. And apart from that, in terms of waste management in those areas, we thought of even creating like from resources like waste. I mean, when they talk about waste, when it comes for bioorganic waste and all those things, we not only just thought of that like as like waste, like we just told the people that it can be reused as a resource and they monetize those things also. For example, those leaves that can be used as biodegradable plates where it can be used because we also found this waste problem inside the same forest area like where the local community was, and also we decided to set up a kind of a waste bank where people give out certain amount of like their waste products like are not non-biodegradable in nature, and thereby we hand out some kind of plant samplings that are like useful for them, like in terms of like a market garden or something like that. So these are some of the measures that we did on the ground, and so far it has been working in a very good way, and we are going to closely monitor it, and most probably by the next year of course, there would be a huge quantification measure. As of now, there's only quality analysis. So qualitative analysis. So because we just take photos of what we are doing and documentation of those procedures. So this is our thing so far. So the action plan has been successfully implemented on the ground, and thereby we are trying to proceed with the next moves later on. So and the crucial part was like to even educate villagers on how they can use financial measures to their optimal way, because we told them that by opening up bank accounts, like in terms of savings, we told them to invest in like clean energies and things like that, so that once those things are set up on the ground, we thought of reusing those profits inside water, and also in terms of water efficiency, also in terms of waste management. So it's like thereby you reuse the same money. I mean, like, it's not about like just waste recycling. We are just using like financial recycling as a means to use the same money, go through the same system to create this kind of the circular economy concept on the ground. So it's more about, I mean, of course, the implementation has been in the starting phase, and it's like little by little growing. Of course, we are even more ambitious in terms of implementing it on a larger scale. And once it's kind of scalable, we thought of reproducing those results in different parts of like those local areas, as well as to other indigenous places. So this is it from my end. And of course, if there is anybody with any questions, let them be free to ask me in terms of answering your queries later on. So that's it. Thanks for giving me the platform.
Yeah, thank you for sharing it. And it's good to hear that your team has like those missions to work on it. And it'd be great if you can share some like some visual things that we can check, like report or like just short PPT like things, so that we can see like what will be the details for those missions. So like, but or any articles or like any documents that we can check, that'd be really nice. And
Yeah, sure.
right.
I'm actually putting together a report. I'm like little by little, like a skeleton framework. Maybe I'll
Oh,
share
you
it.
mean you're putting in the final report?
Yeah, I'm putting in the
Oh
final.
yeah, cool.
And as of now, we are just going with that, and trying to create like a graphical, I mean, more like an infographics on certain scales, and there are like this pictures that needs to be put there, so that it's more like a professional report. I think I sent Leon some message. He just said some one-page summary is enough, but I think I'm putting a bigger report though, so that the details of the report would be given there. So of course, so I mean, like, and I also think I've shared a little bit of the skeleton framework with BB, but I think I've written more than the last time I shared with her. So I'll be sharing with one of you guys later on. And yeah, of course, the things are progressing enough, like as of on the ground. So it's more about like doing the real thing and reporting it like in a way that can be used as in like synergy, because we add these other ideas also. So the thing was like when you talk about sustainable development goals, right? So and also about climate action. So when we are doing projects, we thought of like trying to synergize between sustainable development goals and climate action. When I'm saying like synergy between climate action and sustainable development goals. So there are certain projects, for example, when you talk about specifically on water, since climate action is divided into like two areas, like mitigation and adaptation, and there's like subsectoral. So where our projects would be located in those areas, whether it's mitigation or is it adaptation or subsectoral. So all those things would be categorized on those formats and be delivered on time. So that is it from my end. And yeah, so
Yeah, thank you. All right. Then we can move on to team 3. Can Yoko?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I am here. So
Thank you.
basically the team 3. Oh, why don't I just share the screen just to make it easier? So this is what will be the team 3 just came up with that. I think it's a document. So there's basically different options here. So so the 3 people including me made up, and that's like 3 Koreans and me based in US. So we have 3 options just because we didn't really come to consensus. So there's like options. So basically me and Angela will likely be attending the P4G. And just because we're not from Korea, we cannot read Korean. So I am the one who was in the meeting suggested that it's better it's better to have options, just because if people ask me questions, for example, I will not know anything about Korea. And so that's why I suggested to be from US, because it's easier for me to say something or write something because I have some knowledge here. But anyway, so for option, let's just start with option 2. So this is like very different from what we originally have planned. So our original plan had like GIS, things like that. But we realized that that's kind of impossible to do now. Even within 1 year was kind of impossible because of our busy lives. So option 2 is like so that's I guess the original plan without the GIS part. So these 2 are a bit different things. So option 2 is like making our own initiative, essentially, that it will be based, for example, Mapo district was the one our Korean team suggested about using technology to research about local trees, like where trees are needed. So it's basically similar to GIS, like tree analysis or vegetation analysis, like to find like what these trees need to be planted in the specific region to enhance the reforestation, to make the place better. So I mean that's kind of the background. I mean I kind of went to number 2 though. So number 1 then is that, so basically we want to look at different projects that also plant trees, and then we make our own brand. So like, for example, we can also like do it more like forestry industry, but planting these trees that gets that grow at a relatively fast rate and easily harvestable, then this can be like exported to other countries. So it's not like Colombia, like because that's where the P4G is located. So it's not just about East Asia or North America where our original plan is. I mean, our region is, but we can also expand like globally. But our initial project was started in Korea, or in this specific case, that yeah. So these 500 trees, 500 pine trees and spindle trees, actually from Instagram blog that the Korean team has like recommended, that there's a like a project in this Mapo, I believe. Maybe Andy can describe it a bit later. That this is already like a project within Korea that it's already having like have this kind of project. So we want to do like some similar thing. Yeah, that's kind of one side. So the other, so it's more implementation side, like more actual like having the project in hand. So option 1, it's actually, I'm actually very specific right now. So option 1 is actually my recommendation, my idea. It's more like background, more analysis before the project implementation. So it's something that we can show at the summit, at least. Like we should do some research and literature review possibly. Like, so we can divide it into Korea and US because based on where we live. But then I will just say I as a single person, just because I might end up looking at different technology like GIS or different ways to analyze trees, like anything that we can also use the government documents and how to improve the current systems, like things like that. It's more like really paperwork like paperwork work that we can more like policy work or policy recommendation, something like that. And then the rest is like really the further steps, probably beyond the summit if we want to continue, because we don't have time to do this kind of thing at the moment. So option 3 is basically combine both options to make it so that our ideas can be jointed. That we think is that possible to do it before the summit, but the minus the conducting the external partners. That will be so if we were to have a PowerPoint, we will list them as potential partners or potential like just say potential partners. Yeah, so if we put this as in an order to do, we will look at different projects that's already now that have successful successes by planting trees. But it could be like, it doesn't have to be exported, but it can also be helping like local communities or indigenous peoples in their resources, like renewable energy, like something like that, like anything that's possible by using the localized trees. Then yeah, the rest is all like writing them into policies, like documents, documentation. The rest is all like further up. That is something that we could do at the summit, but not now. But if we were to write presentation along with document, we will put everything down, like the research we have done so far. But yeah, that's like we can't change our thing just because we realized that what we did before was impossible. So we hope that we can do this before the summit, that everything is really research based. Yeah, that's all.
All right, thank you. And I remember that your team had difficulties with contacting the NGOs or
No,
the companies.
our difficulty is more like it's not really contact the partners, but it's more like if we can accomplish our project on time, or if we could accomplish such technical thing at time, it's we just because possible. So there's actually kind of pointless to reach out to people if we don't like. It's only the planning section. So that's why we kind of switch everything like back towards like this kind of approach. Yeah. Yeah, we didn't really switch our topic. It's just that we decided to make it more like more easier for us as a team can do our own time rather than the more technical things.
Yeah, I think that'd be better. And yeah, like as long as like your team has some things like to proceed with, and we still have some time till P4G. So yeah, just tell me whenever you need help. And also I hope that mentoring session helps your team later. All
Yeah,
right,
so
thank you.
wait,
And
just quick question.
Mhm, yeah.
So your comment to the previous team was that we basically need a PowerPoint to have more visualization, like something to show like as a representation to the people P4G and also the report, right? Ideally.
Actually, the format of like GYCC session on 21st has not been yet decided, and that's the one that we are going to discuss today. So yeah, maybe we can talk about it later.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Yes,
Fine.
Edgar?
Is it fine if I can share it like now, like on the screen? Because I mean, even though it's kind of on the way,
You mean share what?
I mean, like share the report. I mean, like a little bit like of what we have done so far.
Oh yeah, sure.
Thank you.
And right after Edgar shows their report, then we can move on to team 4. So please be ready for that.
Hold on a second.
Are you able to share it?
Yes. So this is what we have put together.
Yeah, if you want to share, you need to, yeah, share that screen.
So this is exactly what we have put together so far, and we are still writing it on the down the ground on the line. So like all this comprehensive measures of what we did on the ground and whatever action plans we proposed last year in 2022 and what worked and what did not, and also why we picked this measure as a part of our action plan, and also the feasibility of it, and also the implementation of the action plan on the ground, and also the outcomes with the necessary SDGs where we focused on targeted hits and indirect hits, and finally some appendix and conclusion and references. So like, I mean, like, it's still going on. I'm like, of course we are doing the necessary research so far, like how to combine like other best case practices of how it worked in some other places also, and also where we can put together and try to scale it on different levels. So this is the thing that we are doing now, and the best part is like what we identified. I mean, like, I think there was one person who talked about it in terms of localizing SDGs. So in terms of localizing SDGs, where we found there are certain negative impacts, it can be individual in nature or cumulative in nature. So, and also there was this other kinds of impacts which are indirect in nature. So with that being said, I don't want to take much time. So like we also identified it, and based on that, we decided to break it down one by one, and where we find like, on a positive note, like it's more like a multiplier effect that is done in a positive way, where we focus on different measures, where we implemented it on the ground level, and how it is gonna help the local community directly and indirectly at the same time. So those measures were also put into focus, and I think that will also be shared in the report. So that is it from my end, and thank you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that report. That looks really nice, and yeah, I look forward to see the final version of it. All right, thank you. And is team 4 ready?
Yes, I'll share my screen.
Yep.
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll start with for July and August, you are mostly, Team 4 was mostly working on campaigns. And so the first one was Plastic Free July, for which the targets and the methods were to bring plastic-less ideas to your favorite cafe. That was the main idea. And then explain plastic-less campaign to the cafe manager. And then suggest the use of reusable cups and suggest discounts. Post your local cafe green experience on IG. So that was for July. And the aim was to sort of create awareness through media. So Facebook, Instagram, on group for Instagram pages, social media pages. And then for August, we had the Green Gut campaign, which you can also find on your social media platforms, especially on Instagram, which was okay, the Instagram page or our page is African Youth Greener Future. And the campaign was a call for action targeting youth in the African region to engage in addressing the certification through planting trees. And Team 4 came up with specific methods, which were planting samplings, which was identified as the easiest and most affordable way. So a sampling is a young plant, especially with slender trunk or stem. And then the second one was greeting with plants, which was quite interesting. You can use a potted sampling or a flowering plant in a well-decorated pot. So greeting with plants can, I don't know, be implemented in different ways. When you're visiting your friends, you greet with plants, and you could replace your birthday gifts with, I don't know if anyone would be willing to do that with, instead of using traditional gifts, especially if they contribute to plastic pollution, you replace that with plants. I don't know, for Christmas as well, you can replace your Christmas gifts with, I don't know, a green Christmas, which will be better options than, for example, if you had plastic or gifts that would lead to plastic pollution. And then generating awareness using friend groups and social media contacts. So those were the campaigns that our team came up with. And you can support us in creating awareness on our pages. If you have any questions, feel free to ask or anything else to contribute. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And that kind of those like projects or the campaign would works, I believe. And yeah, I think like the campaigns on the individual level that that collaborative actions really needs. So yeah, I think um that campaign complete with a success. And it would be great if GYCC participants also take part in that campaign and spread those ideas. All right, and can we move on to Team 5?
Hello. Yes, I'll be sharing the screen.
Yep.
So hi. So I'm Frances from Team 5. So I'll just be stop. I'll just be sharing our progress. So for this month, we are finalizing and refining our educational material. Then we're going to be designing the education material and also submitting the action plan final report. So for the educational material, we have already the draft, but we're still working on combining and finalizing the three levels because at first we have like three different levels for different ages, but we decided to have only one combined sorry, one combined educational material for easy reviewing. Then the educational material will be in a module type form wherein I'll be like creating a design. It's just like a PowerPoint, but it will be put into like a flip book. I'll be showing like a sample in a while. We decided because at first we decided to have it printed, but it's it's not quite sustainable. So we only did like an online copy, but we then said it might be like quite boring to read like a PDF with a module. So that's when we thought to like change it into a flip book wherein like it can mimic the flipping of pages. And then also this month we're going to like identify like potential stakeholders with the help of Rachel. So I'll be sharing like a sample of the flip book. Wait, here. So here is like a sample of the flip book. This is like the presentation I just um shared in PowerPoint. So like the mimic. Okay. So it will mimic like the flipping of pages of like when you're flipping like an actual book. So yeah, so this would be like how our educational like material module would be like presented. Yeah, I think that's all from Team 5. And by the way, I think um Rachel and Yungkyung also had a meeting last week. I did not attend because of work, but they have already, I think, finished the draft for the level 3. So by this week, we're going to just like combine and finalize like the whole content for this educational material. So yeah, thank you.
Yep, thank you. And like, does your team also plan to like publish that flipbook into the offline versions? I mean, like, not just online version, but also publish it.
We're still talking about it because at first we really wanted like a printed one, so it looks like a brochure type. But we're also thinking that it might not be like sustainable, or like probably waste, like paper will be wasted. So yeah, we're still thinking about it, but we're open to like your suggestions on how we can like present the educational material other than online.
Okay, like, yeah, like it's kind of um like, since if we print something, that means like we are using like kind of we are making kind of a waste that could be waste later. So, but if any team needs some printed version of your like team's action plan, or the final version or outcome, then we can ask the printing it to the PCO so that they can help with you for the final design or like printing it. So if you need help with it, then please contact me. All right, and fine. How about Team 6? Yeah. And Team 6.
Okay, let me share the screen. Wait a minute. Okay. Okay, can you see the screen?
Not yet. Yes, we can.
Okay, that's great. Oh yes, so this will be in the August update. So as you know that we have established the social media campaign, which is promoting the Paramo ecosystem, to talk about its importance and what are the threats that's facing these areas. So we using the social media basically and focusing on using the Instagram and Facebook page. We have already established this page. It's called Hope for Paramos. You can find it in Instagram and Facebook. And we are keep updating our page every couple of weeks with the infographic post, because we thought that the infographic is more attractive for the users and the viewers. And this is a sample of the page that we have already started. And these are the latest updates of the infographic posts that we are using. So yeah, we are talking about the Paramo ecosystem, like what is it like what its components, what how it's been formed, and etc. Yeah, you can see the example here. And yeah, that's for the regarding the social media. And the second part, which is related to collaboration, we are intending to make collaboration with organization working on the same field, so we can learn from their experience and have better feedback and understanding of this issue. So we found out like a couple of organization, one of them called Committee Sant Urban, the other one is called Compress Blancas, Colombia. Those also are working on a related issue of the Paramo ecosystem, and we are trying to like have better understanding of the solution that they are using, because these are local organizations, so they have feedback from the local communities. So we have started to contact them, and now we're still like waiting from their feedback. And there is also other organization will be contacting them later. So yes, that's the second part of this action plan. And yes, that's it. That's all the updates regarding August.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you
you.
very much.
Just to clarify, like, what would be the purpose of contacting and communicate with the NGO in Colombia?
Well, these are local NGOs, so they are already in touch with the local communities, and we would like to have a better understanding of this issue. And secondly, what are the best solution that they are using to like tackle the issue that facing the Paramo ecosystem, because there is many problems and faces this Paramo, which is also related to climate change, related to mining, some problem related to farming and grazing. So would like to see what are the approach that they are using. Do they are talking with the communities? Do they are making only campaign? Do they are reaching the governments? Like to see what are the better approach that they are using already, and to have like a lesson learned from them, because it's already exists before our campaign. So that's why we would like to make this collaboration.
All right, that sounds great. Like, and since like your team's action plan is much directly related to the Colombian issue, so yeah, I think that that thing will attract the attention of from the Colombia side. Yeah, it sounds really nice, and I'll talk about it later in more detail. But like there'll be also networking session with Colombian youth when we go to Colombia, so you can also use that time for your team's action plan.
Yeah, that's great. That would be great.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we've gone through with all 6 teams, and thank you all team for working hard on your team's action plan and making the final outcome